Dear friends, welcome to yet another installment of Strategic Power. This past weekend, Russian citizens exercised their right to vote and select the next president amidst an election characterized by irregularities, protests, and widespread reports of fraud. The interim president, Vladimir Putin, secured victory with 87% of the votes, even in the territories illegally occupied by Russia in Ukraine, thereby consolidating his leadership for the near future. However, while the legitimacy of the official result was not seriously challenged, an analysis of the leaked and clearly falsified ballots suggests that Putin inflated his popularity by approximately 20 percentage points, a significant increase compared to previous elections, and the more liberal opposition candidate, Vladimir Putin, also outperformed expectations. Therefore, in this video, we will examine the development of the elections, the discrepancy between the official and actual results, and what this reveals about the political dynamics in Russia. Before proceeding, if you haven't already, consider subscribing and turning on notifications to receive information about our upcoming videos. Before getting into the results, it's important to provide some context. One obvious observation is that there was no real opposition to Putin on the ballots in this election. As is well known, Alexei Navalny, a long-time prominent figure in Russian opposition politics, died in a Russian prison some weeks earlier. It's worth noting that, over the weekend, Putin essentially admitted for the first time to being responsible for Navalny's death, stating to the state media on Sunday that he tried to negotiate a prisoner swap involving Navalny with the West, but his proposal was rejected, and, in Putin's words, "Unfortunately, what happened, happened." Similarly, another significant opposition politician, Boris Nezin, an anti-war candidate who denounced the special military operation as a mistake, was barred from running months ago. Nezin caused a major stir by announcing his candidacy in November of the previous year, and within a few days had garnered over 200,000 signatures, double the 100,000 needed to qualify as a candidate. Initially, it appeared that the Kremlin would allow Nezin to run, possibly as a way to gauge opposition to the war within Russia. However, as his popularity seemed to be rapidly increasing, his campaign was abruptly cut short. Volunteers collecting signatures on his behalf were attacked, and he was subsequently disqualified by the Central Election Commission, which alleged irregularities in the signatures supporting his candidacy. However, 3 other candidates were on the ballot this time around: Nikolai Konov of the Communist Party, Vladislav Davankov of the New People Party, a liberal opposition party founded in 2020, and Leonid Slutsky of the Liberal Democratic Party, a Russian ultranationalist party. Although none of these 3 were considered a real threat to Putin's victory, which is why, unlike Navalny and Nezin, they were allowed to run, the distribution of votes among them is still relevant, as it provides insight into Russia's electoral geography and Putin's actual popularity in the country. This is especially true for Konov, as the communists have always served as a reliable outlet for expressing controlled discontent with regard to Putin, especially in Russia's southern regions, and for Davankov, who became the protest option for liberal Russians, primarily those residing abroad. Now, on to the results. Obviously, there are 2 sets of results when it comes to Russian elections. There are the official results published by the Central Election Commission, manipulated by the Kremlin to boost Putin's popularity, and the actual results, whose best estimates are calculated by close Russia observers through leaks, unofficial exit polls, and corrections for obvious falsifications. The consensus among these expert observers is that, in the past, there has been a 10 to 15 percentage point gap between these 2 sets of numbers. In other words, Putin or his preferred candidate would typically get around 60 to 65% of the vote, and then the Kremlin would tack on another 15%. This would result in a Putin victory margin of 75 to 80%, as was the case in 2018. This time, the official results claim that Putin performed better than ever, pulling in just north of 87% of the vote, with a 74% turnout rate. Konov came in second with 4.6%, Davankov third with 4.2%, and Slutsky last with just 3%, while the remaining 1.2% was counted as invalid votes. The intriguing aspect of this result is not so much Putin's victory itself, but rather the improbable margin of his victory. 87% represents a significant increase compared to any previous presidential election, and is well above the predictions made by researchers ahead of the elections. Independent polls, such as those conducted by Levada and Russian Field, for instance, indicated that Putin was expected to perform similarly to 2018, while the two major state-run polling firms, Viti-Sayom and FOM, forecasted just 75 and 81% voting figures for Putin, respectively. The 87% number likely represents a discrepancy of around 20 percentage points from Putin's actual results. The Danilovsky region of Moscow provides an interesting indicator to gauge the discrepancy between the official and actual results, as ballots were tampered with, there to the point that polling station officials reported Putin got 100% of the votes in a handful of precincts, boosting his average, but apparently did not alter the numbers in most other precincts. In those unaltered ballots, Putin got around 67% of the vote, with around 18% going to Davankov and around 6% to Konov. Given that the Central Election Commission claims Putin won 87% in Moscow, and Danilovsky is essentially an average district in Moscow, this suggests that the Kremlin inflated Putin's vote percentage by around 20 percentage points. Another interesting aspect of the Danilovsky results is Davankov's outperformance of expectations. An official exit poll suggests that Davankov also won a plurality of votes outright in several precincts abroad. While this is unsurprising, it is an unfavorable result for Putin, who used to be quite popular among the Russian diaspora. Overall, it seems Davankov performed best in the northern regions of Russia, where, according to the official results, he came in second behind Putin in several areas, while Konov and the communists performed better in the southern regions known as Russia's Red Belt. This geographic divide has been a dominant trend in elections since 1996, with the south being more culturally conservative and pro-communist than the north. In summary, two interesting points emerge here: Davankov's outperformance of expectations, especially in the north and abroad, and the Kremlin's apparent inflation of Putin's popularity. Davankov's rising popularity suggests that, while Putin still enjoys support in Russia, the ideological gulf between liberal Russians and the average Putin voter is widening. On the other hand, the Kremlin's apparent inflation of Putin's popularity could indicate one of two possibilities. It's possible that Putin feels more insecure about his power than before, and has inflated his support as a defensive measure to reinforce his authority. Alternatively, the Kremlin may be using this election as a sort of mandate for a significant initiative, such as a possible new mobilization or escalation against Ukraine or the West. Only time will tell.